I am 18 days, 2 hours, and 3 minutes away from graduating, and I have yet to feel the stress of entering the real world, until now. I've always had a method of relieving stress. I would play sports, I'd draw or paint, I'd record music, I'd create videos for the music, and lately I've been relieving stress by learning something. Anything, really, that gets my mind away from what stresses me out. I was at the coffee shop the other day, drinking my coffee and waiting for my organic basil sandwich on pita bread. I'm not a vegetarian or a vegan, but I suppose being on spring break in a hippie town provoked this sort of hippie adventure for breakfast. It makes you wonder what provoked Pythagoras in the first place, who adopted the vegetarian lifestyle from the significant movement occurring in India. Pythagoras wasn't the first vegetarian, but his fame introduced the lifestyle to the world in such a way that the original title for vegetarians were Pythagoreans. During the 1800s, the vegetarian movement hit the mainstream when figures such as Susan B. Anthony promoted the lifestyle, and Sylvester Graham across the Atlantic, best known for creating the graham cracker, became the face for the vegetarian movement occurring in Britain. Though there was no graham crackers in my meal that I was awaiting, I wish there were, insofar as the original purpose for the graham cracker, aside from promoting the vegetarian diet, was to control alcoholism and sex drive. And shortly after my sandwich and coffee, alcohol seemed like a great idea. After all, it was spring break. I'm a moderate coffee drinker when finals week comes around, just as I'm a huge laptop user during the same stressful week. However, I know exactly who's responsible for my Apple computer, and I'm fairly familiar with his life thanks to the Steve Jobs biography. Yet, I can't say I know anything about coffee. Why should I? All I need to know is that it works when I need it. There's no telling to the effect that Apple will have on the future, but it's interesting to look at the past and connect the global usage of coffee and technology. According to legend, an Ethiopian goat herder named Cal D discovered the coffee plant when he observed the vigorous energy his goats would have upon consumption of the coffee bean. Eventually, he fed his curiosity, no pun intended, and ate the beans for himself and experienced the same vigorous energy thanks to the chemical compound that we're all familiar with today, caffeine. This man changed the world with his discovery and introduced something that a majority of us use today for recreational reasons and medication and everything in between. Yet no one knows anything about this man. He may have never existed, we know so little about him. In my mind, this man altered the world in a way not unlike how Steve Jobs altered the world. The globe is becoming a big Apple product and everyone knows Steve Jobs, as I imagine everyone used to know Cal D. Yet Cal D has been forgotten. It makes me wonder when the products and visions Steve Jobs had for his company will grow so large for so long that eventually the world forgets where Apple came from. An idea that may be hard to grasp for some, but I find it comprehensible, in that my grandma's great-great-uncle was one of the presidents of Chase Manhattan Bank for a significant time in history. Yet the leaders of Chase Bank today have no idea who John Gredler is. Hell, I don't even know who he is. I had to email my grandma for this information. I suppose the fact of the matter is that everything has a history, whether we find it captivating or not. For some reason during this morning furnished with beautiful weather and a vegan meal, I was overwhelmed by how ignorant I was. Though the meal was fantastic, my curiosity soon migrated to the ingredients within my sandwich. Did you know that basil is native to Asia and India, yet the origination of the name basil is borrowed from a Greek word that translates directly to king of the herbs? Another great word origination is coffee, which is borrowed from the Arabic word which translates directly to wine of the bean. So much history is behind the identity of this cousin of mint. Basil has a history in the legal system, Christianity, and in love. When an Italian suitor wanted to show his love, he would place a sprig of basil in his hair to win his heart's desire. Similarly, in Mexico, a man or a woman would keep basil in their pockets as a charm or a blessing, to have love in return from those who they loved. Romania actually understands the giving of basil from a man to a woman as a sign of engagement. I'm not sure if that's the case today, but if it is, that little tidbit is certainly something to remember if you're as broke as me. For many cultures, basil is less of an herb and more of a way of life. Perhaps I'm just another dumb American, but I was unaware of any of that, and my knowledge of pita bread is just as pathetic. Originating in Arabic countries, the bread naturally holds an air pocket in the center of its mass, as a part of the baking process. The armies of Alexander the Great spread the bread across the Middle East, to eventually Greece, where individuals began to introduce some creativity into the baked good. Aristophanes, one of the many playwrights of ancient Greece, documented pita bread as a side dish for many meals, but also suggested that individuals filled the center of the bread with jam. This creativity inevitably provoked the pastry brilliance of what we now know today as pie. Oh, where I'd be without pie. Certainly one of the reasons Alexander is known as a great. Will there ever be a time to know any of this? I doubt it. But I can't say that it's not useful insight. on this meal that I would have otherwise been totally oblivious to. Perhaps ignorance is bliss, but I'm a believer that knowledge is freedom. Today, look for your own useful insight and help free those around you.